Just a couple of minutes before we start this next session, we're just setting up on stage and then we'll commence. Are we ready to start? Ladies and gentlemen, the next session now that we've got running in this room. So here we are at Jumpstart, talking about creating opportunity for emerging artists. I would really like to thank Media Super for their support for this event. And I would like to introduce the chair for this session, Joanna Garvin. Joanna is the Communications Officer and Strategic Marketing for Create New South Wales. So I'll handball over to you. We'll get started.
Cool. Thank you. Great. Cool. Hi everyone. Thanks for coming to the panel session today. As it was mentioned, my name's Joanna and I work for Create New South Wales as the Communications Officer. I'm also a filmmaker, but it's not about me, it's about our fantastic panellists. So to start off with, I'd really like to acknowledge the Wingal, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to elders both past, present and future. And let me start off with by introducing our fantastic panellists. To my left we have Sarah. Sarah is the Development Executive at Goalpost Pictures. At Goalpost Pictures, Sarah has worked on productions such as Wayne Blair's Top End Wedding, Fighting Season, Foxtel, Sky Vision, Lee Rangell's Upgrade, produced with Blummore's Clever Man, ABC TV, Sundance, Neil Armfield's Holding the Man, Matthew Saville's Felinoy, and Anjo Moon's I Am Woman, which is currently in post-production, along with a raft of projects in development. Previously, Sarah has worked at Beyond Productions and Mint Pictures with credits on Bushwhacked, ABC TV, Cricket's Superstar, Foxtel. Sarah has independently produced several short films and music videos which has screened at festivals, including Flickerfest. Sarah has a background in law, previously working as an entertainment lawyer at Media Arts Lawyers. Sarah holds a Bachelor of Arts in Communication Media, Arts and Productions, and a Bachelor in Laws from UTS. Help me in welcoming Sarah. Yeah. Next we have Jack. Jack is a writer who recently participated in the Creatability Internship Program, where he worked with Goalpost Pictures. He studied film at UNT in the film industry. Welcome, Jack. Next we have Thomas. Thomas has worked, this year at Sydney Festival as a credibility internship. He's also volunteered at several events, including the Bollywood 101 Film Festival, Top Fest 2014, and the Newcastle Writers Festival. Welcome, Thomas. And then we have Shay. Shay is who is the development manager at drama at Jungle Entertainment. Welcome, Shay. So I thought we'd start with a bit of an overview of the Creatability Internship Program, which is an open-ended commitment by Create New South Wales to encourage more participation of practitioners living with disability in their sector. And to start with, I thought I came across a really interesting statistic by Jackie Bailey, who is the principal Byway Peer Group, who works at the Byway Peer Group, who reported that artists with disabilities earn 42% less than their able-bodied counterparts. And I was wondering how the panel think the Creatability Internship Program is making it happen today to bridge this gap. Jack, would you like to start?
Thank you for throwing me under the bus there. You could see me thinking. I guess it's good just to, first off, let, the industry at large know that there are professionals with disabilities who, want to get into the industry, because I can't speak for the production companies here, but it just seems to me like it's difficult as is, but, to go out there and say, hi, I'm a writer and I also identify as having a disability seems a lot more daunting.
Yeah.
And then, these programs that come along are fantastic at just getting us out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thomas, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, definitely with paid work in the arts, regardless of whether you're disabled or not, or whether you face another type of barrier, whether it's gender, sexuality, or race, or whatever, like making the transition from volunteering or interning or just doing something at a community or non-paid level and trying to transition whatever your practice or your skills are into something that actually flourish in the arts regardless, but I think that definitely having these programs that allows people to not only make money, but also just being able to be in the physical workspace of whether it's a production company, a major venue like one of the places where one of our fellow cohorts were places like Sydney Opera House, Art Gallery of New South Wales, and just being able to make those places real workplaces. I think those are just as important.
Yeah. Sarah, Shay, do you both have any thoughts? Because I know that Goldpost Pictures and Jungle Entertainment are really great champions of diversity. Did you have any thoughts on, from your experience of taking part in the Creatability Internship Program, like any insights on how you could see the industry bridging that gap further?
Okay. Firstly, that's a pretty alarming statistic, and it's, really important that we continue to engage in these conversations. And I think we really rely on programs like Creatability for our sector to be able to actively take steps to address these kinds of... Really wanted to be involved with Creatability because we wanted to support its ethos of creating pathways for emerging practitioners living with disability to have sort of hands-on experience in the film and television industry because, you know, even as it is, it's such a challenging industry to crack into. And it was so fantastic for our organisation to be able to have Jack there with us and you know, was a real benefit to have his perspective on the projects that we're developing and to have his thoughts on new work that we could engage with. And I think it's just about continuing to seek out and find those opportunities to engage with those organisations like Screen Australia and state funding bodies like Create New South Wales and make sure we're active in taking on these opportunities to address these concerns. And also that it's a paid internship program is, you know, really important because everyone should have paid work. It's not just like, you know, internships.
Yep.
It's a benefit for both us and also the people participating in the program.
Shay?
It's such a big question, and as Sarah said, it's a hugely alarming statistic, but I mean, there's a lot of things to unpack inside of that, but as Sarah said, our industry is really competitive and really tough in whichever role that you're a step to allow people to broker a creative relationship. Relationships in our industry are key for a sustainable career, and if people aren't having opportunity to make those introductions and to broker that from the beginning, then it's really hard to then build a sustainable career, which I think is, one of the reasons why you end up with the statistics that you said. So for us in participating in Creatability, I really looked at it as a first step in what I hope will be a long-term relationship with Greg Moran, who's a writer that came and participated in his Creatability internship with us. And I made a plan with him that throughout the internship we were going to start making those inroads so that hopefully we are planting the seeds for us to continue a working relationship and a paid one at that, where he can earn money when his project gets going and we do development and things like that. So yeah, hopefully that's a little bit of that. But yeah, it's a massive, massive question, Jo. Where to start?
Throwing you under the bus. And I guess that kind of goes to my next question. Thomas, you, as I mentioned, you volunteered at several places, and I was just wondering what inspired the Creatability internship?
Okay. I've been in and out of festival type work since 2014. I originally started volunteering at an event that was run through my uni degrees faculty, and which basically we need students with RSAs to pour the wine so our guests can have that at the event. And then the summer of that year, a friend had tagged me in the call out for Trot Fest that they were looking for volunteers. And then last year was my really big push, where at the start of the year, because I've now finished my uni degree, I was able to do work with Queer Screen, who run the Mardi Gras Film Festival. So I was doing stuff in the office and social media, and then Halfway through last year, I got my first big paid opportunity with the National Young Writers Festival, where I was able to produce and curate their creative control over my artists and events. And then Creatability came into my Facebook feed. I applied for it, managed to get the interview, and then managed to get into Sydney Festival, which was an amazing way to not only end last year, but start this year.
Can you tell us a bit about your experience with Sydney Festival?
Sydney Festival was really great because I was in the position that they created for me while doing the internship was festival assistant. So I was able to work across all the different departments and teams within the festival. So as well as working with the accessibility coordinator, Fiona Jackson, who was like my go-to person. I got to work with everyone across the whole space. So like 1 week I would be doing something for marketing. 1 week I'm out at the festival garden in Hyde Park doing ticketing stuff, or helping with deliveries for artist packs, and just basically a whole range of what it takes to prepare for, run, and execute arts festivals and large-scale events.
It's great. You wore many hats. And Jack, since you participated in the program, like what did you think about it before you participated in it, and what do you think about it now?
Well, first off, I have to say thank you to Jo because she's the one who drew my attention to it. So before going into it, I read the application. I was like, oh boy, that looks great. Good luck to whoever gets it. And then I did the application, and like Thomas, I got an interview, and I was like, oh yeah, this is good. Let's see where this goes. And then got a call saying from Goalpost saying, oh we'd really like you to come with us. So I was like, oh, that's great. And so before, it looked good because it was just an opportunity to get out there and see some hands-on practical stuff within the industry, but not just working on some independent film somewhere, but an actual professional company, which was fantastic.
And Sarah, what kind of discussions have you had with Goalpost since having Jack around diversity and inclusion at Goalpost?
I think since we participated in the program, it's been just an ongoing with discussions around inclusion and diversity in our industry. I think that we speak a lot about screen being such a powerful medium to be able to reflect different perspectives and different people with different experiences in our society. And as a small sort of production company that is quite established, I think Goalpost really views it as our responsibility to be a part of creating new pathways for emerging practitioners in our sector to have opportunities and access. And I think accessibility is a really key word, and I know it's like accessible arts, but it is a really key word about finding those opportunities and making sure we're engaging with programs like Creatability and other organisations like ICE and Co-Curious and Curious Works. I think we really rely on partnerships with these kinds of bodies which are creating those pathways, and then we can bring in these practitioners in certain roles and levels that exist within our organisation. And And it was so amazing having Jack there, and we're also, I think what Shay was saying, continuing on from that, sustainability in our industry is about creating relationships and networks, and Jack and I continue to meet up and catch up and think about how we can continue that relationship and create opportunities. Like Jack's going to come and visit our set on the ways to engage in not just the office work, but seeing other opportunities so that Jack and other people that we create these relationships with can see what their interests are in the industry. And then just following on from that as well, I think something that was so fantastic about the program was just the educational element for us as an organisation, and making sure that our staff are trained in the language of disability, and how we can continue to address that at every stage of our production and our business, down to website design. And then there are so many stages to make a film or television program come to life. I myself work in development, and that's about identifying the stories that we think are important to be bringing to our screen, the kinds of ideas and characters that we want to represent, and making sure that we have a diverse range of voices in that space that we're considering at that very early stage, and how we can bring in opportunities through production and distribution, and making sure it's a thought process every step of the way.
Yeah. How about you, Shay? What kind of discussions have you had at Jungle since having Greg, and how likely do you think as an organisation you might be open to hiring someone who lives with a disability on staff? Because I know you've talked about continuing. Jungle has had different relationships with practitioners, but yeah, I was just wondering your insights, and if Jungle would be open to having someone on staff.
Yeah, Greg is still with us, so I feel like he hasn't gone yet.
Greg.
He had some health things that came up, so it was we had sort of a staggered internship, and part of the transition of him working with us has been from working on projects that we have already in development, looking at new projects that we're considering putting into development, and then also cultivating some work and skill set to kind of get him ready to develop his own ideas. And there's one concept of his that we are currently developing. So we have invested money from our development pot to see that through to the next stage, with a view to hopefully taking the project out with him to market, to see if we can find a broadcaster that's interested in the story. So that's sort of one of the ways that we're sort of looking at working with him. I mean, Jungle have quite, and largely our company, again, it's a small production company, but we have quite a big freelance network. So for each particular project that's in development, we will have a freelance team that comes on, and each team is very bespoke to the story that we're creating. So it's unique every time you do a different project. And then, of course, when that goes into production, you have a bigger team that kind of, a freelance community that come together to make it. So across all those areas, Jungle have already and continue to hire people with disability. And also that we do have a project that's in advanced development that is around the world of an area in disability. It's highly confidential, so I can't tell you any more than that. But again, it's looking at from the perspective of embracing authentic storytelling. The woman, the writer that has created the show identifies herself from this community, and it was a huge passion of hers to really champion this story and wanting to bring it to life to really knock down the barriers of us and them. So I feel like already it's sort of inherent in part of the culture of our company. I think whether we would hire someone, on staff in terms of the small team that we have at the moment, we sort of don't grow that team, and there's not a lot of turnover. It's a wonderful place to work, and I feel very fortunate to have a job there. So a lot of people come and don't want to leave. But absolutely, in terms of the culture of the company, I could see that happening, but it already happens a lot in our freelance community. Yeah.
That all sounds really exciting for both the organisations. It's great. I also wanted to bring up with the panel something that I often come across, and I'm quite guilty of, that whole notion as a person living with a disability, feeling grateful, and we've brought that up, being grateful for being given positions like the Creatability internship, like having work in the industry. How do you all think that we can move past that notion of being grateful and just feeling part of an organisation, and making ourselves feel as though we're valued, and that it's not a tokenistic thing to be given positions within the industry as a person living with a disability?
Could I say something to that? So last year, one of the highest rating dramas on Australian TV was a TV show called The Good Doctor. And at the heart, I don't know if anyone's seen the show, but at the heart of the show, I have autism. And whenever anyone makes that argument, I'm always like, the best rating drama on our TV screen last year had that as the, as the lead character and a key part of the storytelling. So I think the more that there are examples of that, the easier it will be. I also think, there's a lot of goodwill in the industry at the moment, and I think we are in an age of exploring who has the right to tell whose story, and I think there is the commitment from the funding agencies and the producers that I know that people are really looking to see how they can either infuse that authenticity by telling unique stories, different people, different worlds we've not seen before. I mean, that's part of the way we keep our storytelling competitive in a very, crowded market. So I think leaning into the difference is going to be ever more important going forward. But also as more examples of that come up, I think it will hopefully get easier to break that through. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very much.
I think I should preface this that doing Creatability has actually been the first time I've really engaged with the disability side of my identity, position to have in going back to the panel that was just before us, looking at intersectionality and disability and stuff. But one thing that I really liked about my time at Sydney Festival was that I felt really integrated into the team, even though I was only there 2 days a week, but I was in the same office space that everyone else was working in. I got a lot of the same opportunities that other staff members had, so things like getting to do the office Christmas party, or hey, do you just want to come to a nearby pub to do lunch with us during the lunch break, and just things like that. Instead of here's the broom closet we've renovated into an office, so just being in that space was really welcoming, and I really looked forward to coming down to Sydney for those 2 days a week and working with everyone, and it was just a really positive experience.
Jack or Sarah?
I started there. There wasn't any, oh, so do you need anything special? It was like, all right, here's your desk, here's some work. Go for it, which was, it was good because I felt like, oh, okay, this is like any other job then. It's not, something special. Well, it was special to me, but, doing work in just a regular way, and that was a great part of it. Sorry, what else was we supposed to, the other part? I got derailed from
The
what Tom was.
notion of being grateful. And
Yeah,
being
there was
that.
one thing that while I was doing the internship, it was kind of weird because I felt vindicated in my ability. For some reason I kind of undercut my skill set. So when I was working and Sarah was like, oh, you're doing a great job, I was like, oh yeah, all those years of work and training that I've done are paying off. But of course they're paying off because I worked hard over the last 5 or so years before doing the internship. So that was a kind of a strange feeling for me to be like, oh, I'm vindicated, but at the same time I really shouldn't be feeling vindicated by it. I should just be moving on to the next opportunity that comes along.
Yeah, and just wanting to also add the fact that we were there to do actual work related to the organisation and not just the accessibility related. So I felt I was there to actually do work and not perform like emotional labor or anything. For those of you who don't know that term, emotional labor is this idea of people having to put themselves into certain positions to make other people having to explain I wasn't there to say this is how disability operates, and it never, it was just obviously really badly articulating this, but
I think you were trying to say that you're just there as a worker,
Yeah.
not as a,
Yeah,
inspirational
Yeah.
part of the workplace.
Yeah, that's great. And Sarah?
Yes, we work Jack hard. I think it's a really interesting question, and the word grateful it's an interesting idea, I suppose, that I felt personally very grateful that Jack was there because we're a small organisation, and it's great to just have additional support and additional perspectives on our work and owning it and being, saying here is my resume of all of my skills, and I'm here to work, as Jack was saying, and he was a great asset to our team throughout the entire program, and we're looking for ways that we can continue to work together. So yeah,
That's great. And do you all have any advice for practitioners living with disabilities who are emerging and really wanting to get into the industry about how they might go about doing that?
Well, one, apply for creatability. That's the only thing that I can think of, because that's the lucky break that I got. Yeah.
I think with basically as well as looking for things that are disability related, also look for other things that relate to your wider experiences and identities as well, like because like a lot of the stuff that I did last year to get into creatability was through my identity as a gay person. So like just finding all the little niches that you can put your hand up for is really important as well. So, and like if you're able to find it's also equally important.
Yeah, great.
I think I would just say to just constantly be reading the trades and sort of media releases from places like Screen Australia, because there are opportunities. I think it's a really exciting and great time in our industry where there's a spotlight on making sure that stories being told with authenticity, as Shay was saying, and supporting new voices and new perspectives. At the moment there's something that, Jack and I have been talking about, developing the developer. There's an application open at Screen Australia for those opportunities. There was programs like Disrupted, and just being open and aware and continuing to remain engaged. And even though sometimes it can be daunting to reach out and say, hey, like, what's up, let's have a coffee, just like maintaining networks that you've created. Yeah.
Shay, do you have any advice?
Yeah, I suppose I predominantly work with writers, so I would say most of my, feedback on, how to sort of champion and break into the industry would be to writers more than other areas, because it's always a little bit different. So I'm totally with Thomas though. You need to double down on your niche, and the thing that makes you is like what I think everybody needs to lean into as part of their storytelling, and Create New South Wales that you can, Screen Australia. One of the interesting things that's happened over the last year is that the funding guidelines have changed. So as a writer, you don't have to have a producer or a director yet if you want to apply for funding. So if you have a story that you want to tell, work hard at it, practice, get the pitch in as best shape as you possibly can, see if you can ask someone to read it and give you feedback, and go out there and see if you can get some funding to develop your own idea. And then that might help you, again, if you start getting relationships with people, development executives at Screen Australia or Create New South Wales, they can help you, point you in the right direction of finding partnerships that might help you be able to bring your story to life. And I would say, coming back to, there's a real push around authentic storytelling. So where there are productions and stories happening in our industry that have characters who are either people with disability or other areas like cultural backgrounds, or whether the characters identify as LGBTQI+, they need consultants. So another really interesting thing to do is to introduce yourself to production companies. That might be a cold email. Again, New South Wales, hopefully you get a little bit of an insight into who's doing what. But reaching out to people and giving them your CV and having them know who you are and what you're about and what kind of consulting that you could do on projects that they have with other writers, again, is another way to sort of get yourself into the room, get paid, and, again, add value to projects that are coming through development and in production.
And I'd also like to add is that a lot of events and festivals are wanting those stories, and with disability specifically, I know that there's the Screenability programming strand at Sydney Film, and also towards the end of last year with Sydney Festival, where I interned, they just opened up an initiative which is looking to get, which is specifically inviting artists who identify as having disability to pitch their work specifically for Sydney Festival. So as well as government funding and things like that, also seeing if you can go directly to an event or venue or any type of platform to see if they are already looking for you and your projects.
That's great. And Thomas, what you guys are up to now? Like, we've touched a little bit, Jack, on what you're up to, but Thomas, can you tell us what are you looking at the moment?
Well, next week I'll be one of the participants in the Australian Theatre for Young People National Studio Residency Program, which is a writing masterclass where me and 19 other people from all over the country will be down on the South Coast working for a project for that hopefully that will be produced next year. And at the moment, in terms of professional stuff, I'm just job seeking, and I did actually have an interview with Sydney Festival for an actual position. Unfortunately, I didn't get it, but obviously having that internship, I wouldn't have even gotten the interview in the first place. So you win and you lose on, yeah.
Yeah. And Jack, can you tell us a bit? You do a blog, don't you?
I do. I have a movie review website that I barely update, so I'm not going to promote that. Yeah, don't go to that. Great, I'm great at promoting myself. Nice about getting into development, because while I was doing my internship, I worked closely with her, and I was like, oh wow, this is a great part of the industry, because I like reading, and you read a lot of scripts. So I've been working with Sarah, looking at some programs through Screen Australia and different avenues for working, different pathways, I should say, for getting work in that field.
That's great. That's so exciting. Does anyone in the audience have any questions for the panel?
Can you hear me now? Great. Sorry, I said I feel like it's me every single panel putting my hand up. So I was a beneficiary of Create New South Wales' other form of funding through Screenability, and I worked at Sydney Film Festival this year doing the Sydney Film Festival and working on their Screenability thing. Which helps to then have two people who get employed. So there was me as the Screenability marketing intern, and then have another person as a Screenability programming intern. And one of the great things that I've been able to do at Sydney Film Festival is then take what I've been able to see back to other people that I've been able to work at places like Flickerfest and stuff like that. My question, however, is through what I've been talking to with my sort of person that's been working with me at Sydney Film Festival, it'd be very hard to get any form of work. But in sort of our industry, it's something where if you work 3 months, in a festival towards the end, you're not really coming in there with any sort of new ideas. It's all sort of been already built up, very structured, and then you finish before the actual festival starts. I was wondering what you guys think about any form of longer term employment for people with disability going on next year for creatability and screenability, and whether or not we can see more money possibly being thrown in by Create New South Wales for screenability and creatability for next year's budget. Sorry.
That's a good question. Who would like to tackle that one?
For the time frame that I was working with Sydney Festival, I was there from late November up until just before they had finished the festival duration in late January. So I was able to come in at a really exciting point in the festival schedule where everything had been launched and announced, and it was in the build-up and then execution. So it was good to see both sides of the festival thing. And yeah, I definitely agree that one of the big issues in arts employment is that it's very project-based and trying to jump and landing in the water sort of thing. Like obviously, I think with internships, it's very much looking at when are you letting that person in and how long you're allowing them to be working with you, and seeing seeing if it's actually enough time for you to get as much as they possibly can from your organization.
It's a really good question. I think the Creatability program is one of the most phenomenal programs that is currently running in the industry. It's so unique in that there's people that are working in-house at a production company, and then there was people that went and did an internship with the New South Wales Art Gallery. So it was right across the arts. And in terms of the timeline, it was absolutely flexible and to be designed.
Hi. I'm not sure how to phrase this without being offensive, and I honestly don't want to offend anybody because, I know you, Thomas, for example. I'm just so upset that artists and arts workers with degrees are still feeling like there's an actual job out there if only they try hard enough. And I know in the arts, there's a lot of give and take and we feel lucky to get paid work. Create New South Wales is creating a special pathway for people with disability, surely is acknowledgement that there is a problem. And so it's great that, you know, smaller organisations maybe are really trying to change their practice. That's awesome. But is nobody on the panel or in the audience worried that we're not actually going, really, you know? We're all people, and these are people with actual degrees, something I've never been able to get. I'm never going to be able to compete with that person with a degree to get into a special emerging artist because I'm old now. And I work with people who have never done art since they were in high school, and they're in their 50s now, and they want to take part in cultural expression and practice arts like all of us. And so while I'm not saying that's not valid what you're doing, it's always great. What about the invisible people? I guess that's my question. What about all the people that will never ever be special enough or have the right qualifications or the right networking? Where are those pathways, and why aren't government-funded organisations funding real jobs for people?
I think it's, I'll speak for this, but I think it's definitely, again, it's a commitment for those people that we may have missed, and look at ways that we can help those people that may be living with invisible disabilities, and it's something that I'm certainly aware of. So we are always trying to find different pathways for people, but that's a great thing that you've highlighted, so thank you very much for that. Thank you. Oh,
Hi guys, I'm Dan here, fellow creativity intern here. It's a comment to just what was said there. I am in a funny position myself after the intern. Like, I think most people who've been part of a program have not got full-time work as such as part of a program, if I'm correct. I'm in an awkward position that I always, those that know me, so I always say I'm a reluctant leader in a sense that basically I have been seeing what has not been happening, which has brought me into creativity, Career New South Wales with a fellowship, ironically, on Access. And I was just wondering, where do we think the buck stops? Because like even simple things, like I've had things which is related to the arts when I have meetings like NDIS, and I don't know how many people here on NDIS here, when I actually meet in terms of employment, and they say to me, so Dan, as we've all discussed on the panel, we're in a competitive industry, disability or not, you know, but I'm looking for work. But at the same time, when you have organisations say to me, and this was a quote to me when they saw my CV, and I am fortunate that I have been able to study my masters in directing, etc. Dan, have you thought about dumbing down your CV? So it's a funny thing is basically like, I have been accepted to do more study next year, and my mum, who's my biggest advocate, is saying to me, do you really want to have 2 years out, which means it's 2 years more that you don't have full-time work, if that makes sense. So my question is, where do we go as artists with a disability, where basically that, yes, it's good that we have allies, and I acknowledge everyone here is on the same page, but where do we go basically that if we, I don't want to say be put in a too hard basket, but that's pretty much what I'm trying to say, you know, and it's like, I find it very like, even in terms of this fellowship on Access that I'm doing, I have people saying to me, because I, for a better word, would be seen as not a person who you would recognise as a disability straight away. And people saying to me, it's so great of you helping people with disabilities. And these are people in the sector. So without trying to, just where do we go that basically, so we aren't at I'm older than you guys, but 40 years old and not be, I can't get work at, e.g. at a supermarket because my disability would not allow me to do that. So any thoughts where we can go from now?
Sadly. Yeah. Does anyone on the panel have any thoughts?
I sort of, like I said before, the advice that I gave was really because I work a lot with writers, so it was sort of tailored to people that are writing. But I'm aware the lady up the back, I don't know what it is that you do. I'd be happy to have a chat with you because I feel like what you said, I totally hear what you said and I do see the problem in that. But in terms of what can we do about it, I feel like the more specific the more specificity there is, probably the more the more meaningful the advice is that could be offered rather than just a sweeping statement. So again, I don't know what it is that you're looking to try and get. Can you tell us a little bit?
Sure. I've actually got my master's actually in directing and actually theatre directing. And I actually have been accepted actually into something. Okay. My background is actually theatre directing. I actually do have my master's already in directing, but ironically, which back to what I was just going to say, the funny thing is that basically, and this is not saying I'm the most wonderful person by saying this, I have made a statement to the not because of my disability, at Atlantic Theatre Company in New York. Whereas absolutely. Whereas I can't get an internship or whatever you want to call it at any of the major theatre companies here in Sydney. And I think it's quite funny that basically that I am trying to find, obviously directing is what I want to do, but I'm honest and realistic. I know there's not a full-time career in that. And it's just trying to explain to people, like my program, it was something that was mentioned that I actually was involved in the accessibility department at the Sydney Opera House, but that was by choice because basically I did see it and I am still in contact with my mentor, who I worked with, who's here today. And basically I did it because I wanted to show a venue like the Opera House that are, dare I say, shock horror, artists, and sorry if this upsets people, but there are trained artists who so happen to have a disability, and people like, if we can talk after this, so it's...
Yeah, I mean, I work in film and television, predominantly in TV drama, so my experience is somewhat limited to that, but I'm happy to have a chat. Yeah, I don't know exactly what I can offer in terms of theatre because it is, a different, even though it's part of the arts community, it is a very different sort of world that I'm not as familiar with.
Just very quickly, the reason why I went into theatre in the first place is because I actually got into film school, but because of what my disability is, there was not the resources or support in place to help me. I would have been able to say, operate a camera, but I can do it printer. If you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I'd just like to thank all of our panellists for such a great discussion. I really appreciate your time and thank you everybody for coming. It's been really great. Thank you.
And thank you to you, Joanna, for your moderation of today's session. I think it, there's a bit of controversy there, and I think it's an interesting space where we can, we can see opportunities for pathways, but then we don't want that pathway to be a tokenistic pathway. We know that, it is a great opportunity. However, we do want to have a look at, making sure that people can see this as a commitment, even though it's not a funded position or not a funded space. So it's definitely a conversation that we need to continue to have, and it's a burning conversation that I think is not ready to be resolved as yet. So save that conversation for later. And now we're going to have a lunch break. And remember earlier today I made the announcement of Front and Centre program. That's the mentoring program for women with disabilities and artists with disabilities. So the lady who was there providing you to go and find out about that intern leadership program. After lunch, we'll have two exciting sessions, two concurrent sessions, one in room 1. This will be called Fast and Curious. And in room 2, we will have Easy Access, which is related to accessibility, and it's a guide to increasing accessibility. Enjoy your lunch.